Okay, so good morning everyone and welcome to this morning's webinar. For those of you who have just joined us, we have already completed a sound check. So if you need to turn up the volume, if you're using your phone, you can turn up or down the volume on your phone, or if you're using a microphone and speakers option, you can simply adjust the sound on your computer. So today's webinar will be recorded for you, and a link to the recording will be sent to all attendees after the webinar has finished. And we will also include a copy of the presentation slides as well. So there is no need to worry about writing down the content which we've included on the slides during the webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can simply type them into the questions box on your control panel at the right of your screen. And we will also have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, and we will try and get through as many questions as we can for you. So the first part of this morning's webinar covers the year-end process in Thesaurus Payroll Manager, and that will be presented by Audrey. And the second part of the webinar, I will be focusing on how you can use the Revenue Online service for your payroll-related files and returns. So I'll now pass you over to Audrey without delay to begin the presentation. We'll also just switch the webinar off, the webcam off as well, so you can see the full screen. Okay, thanks Audrey.
Thanks Vicky. Okay, so good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us. The first thing we will just look at is completing the payroll for 2015. So it's imperative that all payroll would be completed before commencing to do your year-end returns. So all pay frequencies for which you operate payroll should be completed prior to running any end-of-year revenue returns, so your P35 or issuing your end-of-year documents to employees, the P60s. So all pay periods should be updated for the tax year. To update the pay slips for each pay frequency, you would go to pay slips and update pay slips. Okay. You would enter the pay date applicable to the final pay period for the pay frequency within the tax year. If it's a weekly or fortnightly payroll, the program will increment, by 7 or 14 days from the last pay date. And for monthly payroll, then you would just enter in the relevant pay date. Okay, so just to look at that on the software for a moment. Okay, so you would go to payslips and down to update payslips just to update and close off the period. Before doing that, it is always a good idea to look at your payroll preview just to confirm that you're happy with what you are about to update. Okay, so under payslips, you have payroll preview quick edit. So you should just always ensure that you're happy with this. This is your final check before you update the pay slips for the pay period. So this is listing the taxable gross for all the employees on the pay frequency, the net pay and the payment. And to the right hand side then you just have a comparison, so it's comparing it to the last payment, so the last payment for this pay frequency. Where you do see the asterisk, that just indicates that there is a change from the last pay period to this pay period. So if you know that somebody's payroll should be the same this pay period, that is something just to check. In this case, it's a new employee, so they weren't paid in the last pay period, and that's why we have the asterisk there for Maria Woods. If you need to check anything here, you can just double-click on an employee's name, and you can view the detail behind that, gross pay, etc. Okay, so just always check this before you do your final update. So then pay slips and update pay slips just to close off and finalize the pay period. So this is my payroll for month number 12. So I've put in the pay date relevant to that pay period. Okay, click on update. So you'll always get the message file successfully prepared for updating. Just click OK. It'll always ask you then to take a backup. A backup is extremely important. Should anything happen on your PC, it's important that you have a backup, and we could get you back up and running by just downloading the software again and restoring in the backup. A backup should never be done to the C drive. It should always be on an external drive. So for example, a memory key. So I have my memory key in, which is drive I. So if I click on backup, it's going to tell me a backup will now be done to my iDrive. I click on OK. So if you've previously taken a backup to the same location, you will get a message to say that a backup already exists, and would you like to overwrite it? So the correct answer is always yes. So that means you have the most recent backup. So when you click on OK and close, it'll then tell me my update is complete for that pay period. So until you get that message, the period is still open. Okay, so just click on OK. should always check the status bar at the bottom of your screen, especially if you've got more than one pay frequency. So this will allow you to see exactly where your payroll has been updated to. So I've only got a monthly payroll in this instance, so I can see that my payroll has been updated for month number 12, so it is complete for the tax year. Okay, so we just go back into the presentation there. Okay. So the next thing we'll discuss is just a week 53. So week 53 occurs when there are 53 weekly payrolls in the tax year, and it will fall on the 31st of December or in a leap year on the 30th or 31st of December. So in 2015, only employers paying wages every Thursday had a requirement for a week 53, as there were 53 Thursdays in 2015. For 2016, as it's a leap year, week 53 would be applicable to employers paying wages on a Friday or a Saturday. Okay. Thesaurus payroll manager will always offer a week 53 option subsequent to completion of week 52, but it should only be processed if on completion of week 52 there is a subsequent pay period within the same tax year. So it'll always be there, but you should only use it when it is applicable to you for the tax year. The program automatically applies the revenue rules for week 53, so there's no requirement for the user to take any action on the software. The program will implement those rules. It's no harm to make sure that you're on the latest version in case there are any, there have been any recent amendments by revenue, and you can check that by going to help and check for updates within the software. It's extremely important to follow Revenue's PAYE calendar, and that's why it's important to only do a week 53 when it is applicable to you, and it keeps you then on the correct week number in Revenue's eyes. Okay. So on completion of the final payroll for each pay frequency that you run payroll, you would issue the final pay period pay slips to all employees. So to do so, you would access the pay slips menu, and pay slips can be printed or emailed as per your requirements. So just have a look in the software there. So under pay slips, you have print/email pay slips. Okay. When you select email pay slip, it will only show you the employees that you've got email addresses entered for. And when you choose to print the pay slips, you do have the option to exclude employees from email addresses from printing. So if you do have a mix of email pay slips and print pay slips, that feature can be handy for you. Okay. So you simply just email or print the pay slips for that final pay period and issue them to the employees. Okay. Okay, so then if we just look at preparing and submitting the final P30, so on completion of the final pay period for the tax year, you would prepare and submit the final P30. So you would access the ROS menu and P30, prepare the P30 report, selecting the P30 option that you have used to date for this tax year. So that is either the P30 by date or the P30 by week number. So just stick with the P30s that you have been using so far this tax year. So you should review the P30 figures for the final P30 period, so the month or quarter ending the 31st of December. Okay, so you can see here your final month or quarter if applicable. So just review those figures prior to submitting your P30 to Revenue. So when you submit the P30 for the period, you arrange payment to Revenue in accordance with the P30 deadline. Under your payment record within Thesaurus Payroll Manager, you can record the payment that you have just made. Okay, so just to look at that on the software. Okay. So under ROS, you have P30. So as mentioned, just choose the P30 report that you have been using for the tax year. So I'll just click on the P30 by date. So this is my December column, so my monthly total for December, or at the bottom I have quarterly for those people that are on a quarterly return. Okay. I have the option then to record the payments as mentioned. So to record the payment, I can just click on the payments option here, okay, and just record the payment that I have made along with my P30 submission and update. So if I go back to my P30, okay, so there's the payment that I have just recorded, okay, and it's showing a balance payable of 278. Okay. Okay. So we need to look now at the employer paid medical insurance. So where an employer pays medical insurance on behalf of employees, employers are required to include the portion of the medical insurance premium that is eligible for tax relief for each employee on the P35. So the medical insurance providers will advise employers of the amounts for each employee, and these amounts must be input into the payroll for all applicable employees prior to submitting the P35. The programme will not prepare a ROS P35 for you until this requirement is met, as it knows that a file without that information would fail validation on ROS. So this only affects employers with employees on the payroll for whom a medical insurance benefit exists. Okay, so from the utilities menu, you would choose to input medical insurance eligible for tax relief. So all employees will be listed. So you would select the first employee record for whom a medical insurance benefit exists. You enter the tax relief at source or the medical insurance eligible for tax relief value as advised by the medical insurance provider. So any TRS figure that you enter will automatically be incremented to give the medical insurance premium eligible for tax relief, and that is what revenue require on your P35. So that amount cannot exceed the taxable premium paid by the employer, so the value of the benefit that the employee has been taxed on through the payroll year to date. So once you've entered that information, you select Update to save the entry, and you repeat the process until all relevant employees have been updated. So we'll just take a look at that on the software. So under Utilities, you have Input Medical Insurance eligible for tax relief. Okay, so you just select the first employee that you have a medical insurance benefit for. Okay, so you can enter in, as we said, either the tax relief at source or the amount eligible for tax relief. Okay. And update. Okay, so this employee has been updated. So it's as simple as that, but you just need to get that information from the medical insurance provider. Okay. Okay, so you would review the end of year reports then in the Thesaurus Payroll Manager to ensure that you're satisfied with the payroll information and figures prior to proceeding to the P35 submission. So you can access the year-end P35 report by going to P35 and P60s and select the P35 spreadsheet file copy. So this report gives a full listing of all employees employed within the tax year for all pay frequencies. So any employee that has been paid within the tax year will be listed on this report. So that's present employees and leavers within the tax year. So employees' wages as processed each pay period are accumulated and displayed on this report, and this is the exact information that will be transferred to the P35 file for ROS submission. So the checks that you should do would be, number one, to ensure that all employees employed during the tax year are listed. So even if somebody was only with you for one day, if they've been paid at all within the tax year, they must be included on the P35. Just ensure that all employees have a PPS number present, or in the absence of a PPS number, you should ensure that you have the date of birth and address for the employee. So just in the absence of a PPS number, the minimum requirement is the date of birth and full address. If there has been a deduction of LPT, a PPS number is mandatory, and that file would fail on ROS with an LPT deduction and the absence of a PPS number. So you would need to ensure that any employee that has had LPT deducted has the PPS number entered on the payroll. If any employee had multiple employments during the tax year, the programme will automatically amalgamate those records when preparing the ROS P35. So ROS will only accept one record for each employee, so for each PPS number, they will only accept one record, so the system will amalgamate that. Okay. So if you notice any errors or omissions on the report, you should rectify those before proceeding to preparing and submitting the P35. The reverse update function can be used to revise historical payroll information where it is appropriate to do so. And for information that has been omitted, such as a PPS number or address, etc., you could just go to Employees and add and amend employees to rectify that. So just go into the software then and take a look at that report. So we have P35 and P60s, and then P35 spreadsheet file copy. Okay. So this is the report. So I can see on this report that I actually don't have a PPS number entered for Joe Adams. So if I have the PPS number, I can rectify that now by closing this, going to Employees and add and amend employees, and selecting Joe Adams. Okay, so I can just enter in the PPS number, okay, and update. So I can go back to my spreadsheet file copy. Okay, so I now have a PPS number entered for all of my employees. Okay. So before you would submit your P35, you should establish the payment status of the employer. So is there a balance payable to revenue on submission of the P35 in addition to your periodical P30 payments? Or maybe there's been an overpayment, so therefore you're in a reclaimable position, or there may well be a zero balance if all the payments have been made up to date. So you should reconcile the payments made to revenue as per the ROS account, and this can be done by preparing a ROS statement of 2015 payments on account. Okay. So to prepare a ROS statement of 2015 payments made on account, you check the P30 periodical payments by logging into your ROS account and selecting Revenue Record. From the Options menu on the left-hand side, okay, so you can see the print screen here, you go down and select Payments. So the tax type then is PAYEMP and the tax year 2015. So all payments made for the tax year will be displayed on screen. So you can check those against your P30, against the payroll system, the P30s and the P35. Okay. So the deadline, as you probably all know, for the P35 is the 15th of February, or where a company has ceased trading, the deadline is 46 days after the cessation of the business. When you are satisfied that the payroll is complete for the tax year, you can proceed preparing and submitting the P35. To prepare the P35 for ROS, you access the P35 P60s menu and choose ROS P35. So you should ensure that all validation issues have been resolved. So if the program comes up with validation issues, they do need to be rectified before it will allow you to prepare the P35 for ROS submission. So when all issues, if any, have been resolved, you can click on Continue. Okay, so just here. The payroll will default to a destination of the ROS folder on the C drive, and within that a P35L folder. So if you're happy enough with that location, you can just click on Prepare. If, for example, you have ROS maybe on a different machine, you may need to browse there and select maybe your memory key to save the P35 to. So we'll just take a look at that in the software. So under P35 and P60s, we have ROS P35. Okay. It'll always ask you to make sure that you're on the latest version prior to preparing your ROS P35. So I know that 4.10 is the latest version, but if you wanted to check, you can go to Help, okay, and check for updates. So it'll assure you then that you are on the latest version of the software. Okay. So we'll go back to P35 and ROS P35. Say OK to that message. Okay. So you can see straight away I'm getting a message here about validation issues. So if I just move that across. So it's telling me that the PPS number that I have entered for Mary Byrne does not appear to be a valid PPS number. Okay. So the program does have a checker in the background and it is able to validate PPS numbers. So if it is giving this message, that should be rectified and the correct PPS number entered. Or if you don't have it, just ensure that you have the minimum information of the date of birth and address. Okay. I've only got one validation issue, so I'm not going to take a printout of it. So I'll just say no to that. Okay, and close. I'll just go back to my add and amend employees to rectify that PPS number. So if I realise that it actually should be a V and not a W, just click on OK. Okay. So now I can go back to P35, P60s and back to prepare my ROS P35 file. Okay, so I'm no longer getting the message about the validation issues, so you should always make sure that all validation issues have been rectified. So I can simply click on Continue and then on Prepare File. Okay, so I'm getting another message here. So this is to do with the medical insurance premium. So I did mention that the program won't allow you to prepare your ROS P35 until you have entered that information in for all employees for whom a medical insurance benefit exists. Okay, so I need to rectify this. So if I just click on OK and close, and back to Utilities and input medical insurance eligible for tax relief. Okay, so I have my new employee, Maria Woods, that I have entered a benefit for, and I omitted to enter her medical insurance eligible for tax relief. So I can rectify that now by entering it. Okay, and update. So now we'll try again. So P35 and P60s and enter ROS P35. Continue, prepare file. Okay. So it's coming up to tell me that my ROS P35 has been prepared, and it will always call it the last 5 characters of your PAYE registration number, the year.p35. So that file now is ready for uploading to ROS and should go through successfully on ROS with no issues. So I can just click OK on that. Okay. You have the option there to view the ROS P35 XML file. It's not the easiest thing to read, but that is the spec that Revenue require, and it's programmed as such. So the other reports under your P35 and P60s heading would be more designed for, the user to read and, to print and keep for your own payroll records. Okay. So just to speak then about submitting the ROS P35. So to submit the ROS P35, you need to log into your ROS account by going to revenue.ie and selecting ROS Login. So you enter the password associated with that certificate and then click on click on Login to ROS. Okay. So ROS will automatically bring you to My Services, and within that section you should choose the option to upload a form completed offline. Select P35L from the drop-down list of forms and click on Upload Return. Okay, so you can see there in My Services, and the option here is to upload a form completed offline. You select the P35L and Upload Return. Okay. You click on Add File and select the P35 file for upload. So as we mentioned, that would be the last 5 characters of the PAYE number -15 for last tax year, .P35. So you can browse to the location of CROS P35L or the location that you've chosen to submit the P35 to. Click on the Return and then select Open. It'll then look for the ROS password again, and you select Upload File. Okay. The different P35 reports will display on screen, so that's the P35L, the LT, the LF, and the P35 declaration. So they will all be displayed on screen as read directly from the P35 file that you have just uploaded. Okay, so this is all the different elements of the P35 return coming together in the ROS P35. The P30 payments details totals all payments submitted for 2015, and these figures as displayed are taken directly from your account with Revenue and not from the payroll record within your Thesaurus payroll manager. Okay, so if you haven't entered them on the Thesaurus payroll manager, it's not going to affect anything here. It's taking it from your account with Revenue. So the P35 summary will show if you have a balance outstanding, if you have a zero balance, or if you are in a refund situation. Okay. So this calculation is taken from the payments made on account via your periodic P30s and the total liability for the year from the P35 that you have just uploaded. To proceed with the P35 submission, you must select if you wish to make a payment of the ROS prompted amount outstanding. Now, if this amount due is equal to the December P30, then you wouldn't repeat the payment, okay? So you enter the payment details at this point, or you choose to file a return only. So if you're in a refund position, or if you wish to make payment at a later date, then you can choose to upload a return only, file a return only. Okay. So if you're making a payment with the P35 submission, you would select your payment method. So this is your RDI, your Ross debit instruction, or a debit card. So the amounts due will be displayed. You enter the total amount of the payment. You enter the date of the payment, and if paying by Ross debit instruction, this can be set to the 23rd of February 2016, and then select Next. You then need to confirm the payment. So you confirm the file upload by entering in the password. You select Sign and Submit, and an acknowledgement of confirmation will display on screen, and you should retain this number. Okay. An acknowledgement of the Ross P35 will also be sent to your Ross inbox. Okay. So just confirming payment here, you're just clicking OK as per the screenshot below. So if you're filing a return only, that is a return with no payment, so using this option if you wish to return the P35 without payment, or indeed if you have no further payment to make. So you select the option to file a return only. Okay. You confirm that you wish to file the return only by clicking on Next. Again, you enter in your password and sign and submit. And as with all Ross submissions, an acknowledgement confirmation will display on screen, and you should retain that number. And again, the acknowledgement will be sent to your Ross inbox. So then we look at the P60s. So the P60 is the Employee Certificate of Income on all deductions such as PAYE, PRSI and USC for the tax year, and also LPT actually. So P60s are only issued to employees who are still in your employment as at the 31st of December. So any employee that leaves during the tax year prior to the 31st of December would not be entitled to receive a P60 from you. If an employee leaves on the 31st of December, then they are entitled to a P60, and they would also get a P45. Okay. So only one copy is required to be issued to each employee, and the P60 should be issued to the employees by the same deadline as the P35, that is the 15th of February. So Revenue would instruct the P60s need only be made available to employees, so issuing P60s by email is perfectly acceptable. Revenue no longer provide P60 stationery, so all payroll software providers are permitted to print the P60 template to blank A4 paper. Thesaurus Payroll Manager prints them in accordance with the Revenue guidelines, and also caters for P60s in the Irish language. Okay. So to print or email the P60s, you go back to the P35 P60s menu. You can select an individual employee by clicking the employee's name, or you can do select all to issue P60s for all employees at the one time. You select print or email from the print email option, and if you have two pay frequencies, you do need to click on the window menu and choose the alternative pay frequency to access the P60s for the other pay frequency. So this, I suppose, is a copy of the P60 that would be printed from the software. So this is, along with Revenue guidelines. So it is a valuable document for the employees, but you are permitted also to give copies of P60. So if an employee does come to you, they've lost their P60, you can easily just print or email them another copy. Okay, so we just take a look at that on the software. You go to the P35 P60s menu, okay, and down to P60s. So the employees will be listed here. It's remembered that I had ticked to exclude employees with email addresses from printing. So if I want to print all P60s rather than email some, I can just untick that, and I now have all employees available for printing. So to print all, I can click on Select All and then Print. If I'd like to preview them on screen, I can just tick to preview and print, and I then have them on screen for me. Okay. If you have had an employee on your payroll for the year that didn't receive any payment, you also have the option to include a zero pay P60. So by default it wouldn't print a 0 P60, but you can indicate that you want to print it, and then it'll print along with all other P60s for you. And there's the option then to to print the P60 in the Irish language. Okay, and to go between print and email, you just select it from the drop-down menu. Okay. And as mentioned, if you do have, for example, a monthly and a weekly payroll, you would just access the window menu and go to the weekly payroll to print the P60s for your weekly paid employees. Okay. So just like to thank everyone for joining us this morning. I'm now going to pass you over to Vicky to do to cover the ROS payroll related returns, and after that then we will deal with the any questions that you may have. So if you just bear with us for one moment, we'll just do a quick switch over. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. And yeah, if you do have any questions on the first part of the webinar there, please do use your questions box there in your control panel at the right of your screen there, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. So yeah, so just moving on now just to the second part of the webinar, which is just going to guide you how you can use the Revenue Online service alongside your 2016 Thesaurus Payroll Manager software. So how basically you can use ROS for your in-year files and returns. Okay, so basically to access ROS, if you don't have a shortcut created to it already, the easiest place to go is to the Revenue website, which is www.revenue.ie, and here you'll find the ROS login option here. So if I click on this then brings me through to the ROS login page. 3 steps involved: simply select your certificate from the drop-down menu, enter the associated password and click the button Log into ROS. So it's maybe important to note here that you can only access ROS on the machine to which you have your ROS digital certificate saved. However, if you did want to get ROS onto more than one machine, you can actually apply for more than one digital certificate once you're in ROS there. So probably one of the most common support calls at this time of year is the exporting of your P2C files from the Revenue Online service and bring them into the Thesaurus Payroll Manager software. So we'll begin with looking at how to do that. So the P2C is simply the employer's copy of an employee's PAYE tax credit certificate. So it's the electronic file format as opposed to the paper format. So it's just the name given to that. Okay, the P2C will include details of your employees' tax credits, their USC rates and any LPT deduction if applicable. And each employer is obliged to apply these tax certificates to their employees' pay. So in December each year, Revenue will issue the P2C files for the following tax year, so usually around the 10th of December, around that week, the second week in December. They will issue the P2C files to you in bulk, okay, and you should receive an email from them saying that you now have new P2C files in, okay. Notification of P2C files, be it the new ones for the tax year or amended P2C files, will be sent to the email address that you have actually registered with ROS. So the starting point for exporting your P2C files, so once you've logged into ROS, you're simply going to click into Revenue Record here. And down the left-hand side under your options menu, you will be given the option to view your PAYE and USC P2C details. So simply click this option. If the current tax year isn't showing already, simply choose the tax year required, so in this instance 2016 from the drop-down menu, and then click on search. So at the start of a tax year, you don't actually need to be filling anything else in this section here. Simply select the tax year and click on search. And that means then that all the employees for whom Revenue have registered to your PAYE number will be shown on screen. Once you have your listing, you will be given a couple of options for exporting. Okay. So the first option here is to export complete list, and this is the option you are always going to choose when it is the first time you are exporting your P2Cs for your new tax year. And this will ensure that all employees listed on screen for you will come into the P2C file for you. So it's export complete list in this instance. The second option is export amendments only, and this is the option you should be choosing down the line. So if you receive an amended P2C file, for example, or you have new employees, you can use the export amendments only if you're subsequently exporting P2C files during the year. You can still do export complete list. It's not ruled out when it is mid-year, but if it's simply you want to just bring one or two, where you have been notified of just changes to some employees, export amendments only will work for you there. So both export options there, exporting the complete list or exporting amendments only, once you've selected either option, just depending on the internet browser you are using, you may then get the option of where you are going to save the P2C file to. If you aren't given the option of to choose where to save to, your P2C file normally then saves to your default downloads folder. So for example, Google Chrome, if you're using Google Chrome as your internet browser, that is an example where as soon as you've selected export complete list or export amendments only, it will simply save straight away to your downloads folder. You won't be given the option of choosing where to save to. Okay. In comparison, Internet Explorer, for example, will give you the option where to save to. And if you are given the option of choosing the location for your P2C file to save to, we do recommend choosing somewhere simple, for example, your desktop, your C drive, your downloads folder, or My Documents, and that will become clear in a little while why we're mentioning those places. Okay. If in doubt, if you're not sure whether your P2C file has saved and has downloaded, at any time, and it doesn't matter which internet browser you're in, it can be Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, or Mozilla Firefox. If you're in your internet, and it doesn't matter again what page you're on, if you press down your Control button and J on your keyboard, it brings up a pop-up screen which will display your downloads. And if your P2C file has downloaded, you will see it there at the top of that pop-up screen for you. So it's just another way of checking. Okay. So once you have your P2C file saved from Ross, you are now ready to bring that into the Payroll Manager software. Okay, and all you're going to do, you would then just minimize your internet or close out, go back into the Payroll Manager software, and you're simply clicking on the Ross menu, the P2C option, and Update from Revenue Tax Credit P2C file here. Okay. So what the software does is that it automatically searches for your P2C file. So in the background, it's doing an automatic search for you. Okay, and the locations where it's searching, it just comes back to what we've just mentioned there, is that it will search your desktop, it will search your C drive, it will search the downloads folder and also your documents folder. Hence why if you do get the option to save the file, we recommend saving to one of those 4 places. If it does find the file, it will then display it in a pop-up window that you can see here. So it will say recent files found in common download locations, and you'll see there's my file. And it will also reference the date. Okay, so you'll see here in this example on screen it says today's date. So that would be a P2C file that has been exported obviously today. Only files which are less than 31 days old will be shown. So you may end up with a listing here if you've had a couple of P2C files exported in the last month. It will only show the P2C files which are less than 31 days old in order to avoid you importing old P2C files and perhaps inadvertently overwriting more recent revenue instruction. Okay. If you do get this pop-up window, all you do is double-click anywhere on the line and that will populate the following screen with your employee details. Okay. So in the event that the software cannot automatically locate your P2C file for you, all is not lost. Basically, all you'll need to do is click on Locate File at the top left of the screen. Okay. And just browse to where your P2C file has been saved. Once you select it, all the contents of the P2C file will be displayed on screen for you here as per the example here. Once you've selected your file, we do recommend just printing a copy of what you're seeing on the screen, because this is actually a copy of the P2C file in full as you have exported from ROS. So it's a good idea just to print this and just keep it with your records there, just to refer back to if need be. Once you've printed the P2C details, then simply click Update to complete the importing of the P2C file. Okay, so I just want to show you that example there in the software. Just bear with me there. So I just open up my 2016 company here. Okay, so I've just exported a P2C file from ROS. I'm going to go to my ROS menu, P2C, and Update from Revenue Tax Credit File. So you'll see here I'm not getting the pop-up window to say that I have recently found files. That's because my P2C file that I'm using today in this test version is older than 31 days old. So instead I'm going to click on Locate File and browse to where my P2C file is. Here, click on Open, and it populates the screen with the employees that are included in it. Down the bottom here then you can see the option to print the P2C details if I wanted just a copy of what I'm viewing here. And when complete, I click on Update. Okay. So the next screen, it's important just to review this because it is going to bring to your attention any issues. The top section here, Updated, will give you a breakdown of the employees that were in the P2C file and who have been successfully matched with your employee record. So everybody appearing in this top section here, their revenue details section has been updated accordingly. Okay. Most importantly, you really need to review anybody's names that are appearing in the Not Updated section, and there's two sections here. This first section here are for employees who are in your payroll software but were not in the P2C file. Okay, and one of the reasons for that could be that they are new starters. You've set them up in the software but have not yet registered them with Revenue. So Revenue don't know that they're under your PAYE number. Or you could be waiting, that you have registered them, you're just waiting for the information to come back from Revenue. Or it could be that the PPS numbers entered just need to be checked. The P2C file uses PPS numbers to match up to your employee records. So if a PPS number is missing or has been entered incorrectly in the software, then the P2C file can't be matched with anybody. Okay, so anybody in this section just needs reviewing. Likewise, this bottom section, this is for employees who are in the P2C file but not in your software. And again, it could be that the PPS number is missing or has been entered incorrectly again. Or it could be that, you know, they've maybe left your employment, they're no longer on your software, but Revenue haven't updated their records at their side, or they simply need to be informed that they have left your company there. Okay. If there's employees in the P2C file that aren't in your software and you do need to add them in, you can use this shortcut button here to add some or all of the employees to the payroll. And this will then create an employee record in Add and Amend Employees for them, and it will complete their revenue details section for you automatically. So if I just click on this option here, okay, so I'm asked whether they are weekly, monthly or both. So if I just say both here, okay, so it may be that my employee at the top here, she's to go into weekly, and this gentleman here is to go into monthly, and so on. Okay, and once I've selected all my employees that I wish to add, I click on Finish. So what the software does, if you are setting up employees in this manner, it does set their payment type to cash, and it also sets their PRSI class to A1. So it is then worthwhile just going into the employee records afterwards and reviewing what's come through. So you may, you need to add in extra information, like if they need on their pay slip emailing, for example, to pop their email, their bank details here, to change their PRSI class, etc., etc. Okay. Okay, and that's how to bring in your P2C file there. And just in the PowerPoint presentation, which you will receive at the end of the webinar here, there's the print screens I've just shown you here. Okay, so Thesaurus is also able to produce files for upload into ROS, so your in-year returns to ROS, and that's namely, for example, your P45 Part 1 for leavers, the P45 Part 3 and P46 for starters, and also the P30, your P30 return as well. And if you are using Thesaurus to create these files, once you are in the Revenue Online service, they are all uploaded in the same place, and that's within the My Services section, and by going to Upload Form Completed Offline. And here you'll be given a little drop-down menu where you will see the various options for your forms. Okay. So take a look first of all at if you are processing any leavers in your software and how you can inform revenue of them. So basically, after processing a P45 in the Payroll Manager, it is a requirement then that Part 1 of their P45 is to be submitted through the Revenue Online service. That is if you're registered with ROS already, and that's basically to inform revenue that the employee has left your employment. Okay. So the starting point then is after you've issued the P45 in the Payroll Manager is to then prepare your ROS P45 file ready for upload, and that's done by clicking on the P45 menu and preparing your ROS P45 file. This brings you through to the following screen, and all you do here, first of all, the employee's name will be in this left-hand box here, and you're simply going to select their name, click the Add button, and that moves them to the right-hand side. If you have P45 more than one employee, you can do a batch P45, and you would simply then select the additional names one at a time and click on Add so that you have a number of employees sitting here on the right-hand side. Revenue do just recommend that if you are doing a batch P45 file, that it's a maximum of 10 employees in every batch that you do. So if you have more than 10 to P45, do 10 in one batch, upload, and then come back and do a second batch as required. Okay. Once you have your employee or employees in the right-hand section here, you're simply going to click on Prepare File. This will bring up an additional pop-up box, so simply enter your contact name and your telephone number, which is optional, and you click on OK. Okay. You'll then be given the option to choose where to save your P45 file to, and by default the location is your C drive, your ROS folder, and your P45 folder. A default file name is also populated for you, and you can change this if required. So an awful lot of people would maybe put the employee's surname in front of the P45 file wording, so they can just identify that P45 file quite easily. Okay. Then when ready, click Save, and you'll then be told now that your file has been prepared and you can now upload that to the ROS website. Okay. So again, if I just pop back into the software, so first of all, I'm just going to quickly issue a P45 to an employee. I'm going to say yes. Okay, so you will get the little prompt to say that you've issued a P45 and you now need to prepare a ROS P45 file for revenue. So I'm going to close out of the P45 screen. I'm going to go to the P45 menu, prepare ROS P45 file, and I can see my employee here is sitting in the left-hand box. So I'm going to select his name, click on Add, and he's over in the right-hand side, and Prepare File. I'm going to type in my contact name, telephone number, which has come through from the company details screen, and I'm going to click on OK. So I'm now given the option to save my file. Okay, so I can change that if need be. And I may just want to amend the file name so I can easily identify that file, and I save. Okay, and my file is now ready for upload to ROS. So you then would log into your Revenue Online service. You're going to go to the My Services section, and under Upload Forms Completed Offline, you're going to choose the option P45 Part 1. Then simply click Upload Return. Okay. This brings you through to the following screen, and all you do here is click on Add File, and on clicking Add File you browse to where you've saved your P45 file, and you select it, and the wording will come into the box here. The file will sit here in this top box. Then enter your password again and click on Upload File. Okay. You'll then receive notification that the file has been successfully received from revenue. Okay, and that acknowledgement will be in your revenue record for you. Okay, so that's uploading part 1 of the employee's P45. You then need to print out the employee's P45, so that is parts 2, 3 and 4 of the P45 to give to the employee. Okay, and all this is done within the Revenue Online service. Okay, that you can print a pro forma copy in the Thesaurus Payroll Manager, but that is a file copy only. It's not a valid P45. So it's just, again, just worth noting that the valid P45 needs to be printed from the ROS site itself. So once your P45 Part 1 has been received, in a short while, Parts 2, 3 and 4 will come back into your ROS inbox for you, ready for printing. Okay, and you simply select the P45 there and press print. It's also important to note as well that you do need to have official revenue P45 stationery to print onto. Plain A4 paper is not valid, and you actually need to get the revenue stationery. It's buff coloured and it's perforated in 2 places, so it's just one sheet for parts 2, 3 and 4 to be printed onto, perforated in 2 places for you, and it has the revenue watermark in it. Okay, if you don't have any P45 stationery, it can be ordered from Revenue's Forms and Leaflets section, and the number is there for you on screen, so it's 1890 306 706, and they are very quick usually to get that paper out to you. Okay. So the Revenue Online service can also be used to register any new starters with you, and there's 2 forms that can be produced in Thesaurus Payroll Manager for upload into ROS. The 2 starter forms that you can produce are, first of all, the P45 Part 3 and the P46 option. Okay. So where an employee who has previously been employed during the tax year, they should have been given a P45 from their previous employer, and they will give their new employer Part 3 of that P45. Okay. That P45 Part 3 then needs to be submitted to Revenue, and that can be done via ROS, and that is simply to notify Revenue of the employee's commencement of employment with you. On receipt of the starter information into ROS, this will then prompt Revenue to issue a new tax credit certificate for you, so a P2C file for you, which will come into you, again, which you can then export into your software. So where you do have a starter in Thesaurus Payroll Manager, you can prepare a P45 Part 3 file for upload into ROS by going to the ROS menu, the P46 and P45 Part 3 option, and selecting P45 Part 3. Okay, so first of all, you will have set up the employee in Add and Amend Employees. So all you do then, once you are in the P45 Part 3 screen, is simply select the employee's name from the listing. All this screen will then populate from the Add and Amend Employees information. And all you need to do then is fill in the registered number of the previous employer, the date of leaving, and any LPT deducted, and all that information will be available on the P45 Part 3 that the employee has given you. Once complete, simply click Prepare File. Okay. Again, similar to when you're doing a P45 Part 1, you'll then be given the prompt to save your file, and you can see that the file name will be the employee's PPS number, and again you can change that if need be. So simply make a note of where the file is saving, or change this to suit your requirements, and click Save. And that P45 Part 3 is ready to upload into the Revenue Online service. Okay, so I'll just do one of those for you. So we're going to ROS, the P46 and P45 Part 3 into the P45 Part 3 option, and select my employee. Type in my date of leaving and the registered number of the previous employment and any LPT deducted, and I'm going to prepare file, and then I'm prompted then just to save my file here. Okay. So similarly, any new starter who commences employment with you but hasn't been previously employed within the same tax year, they still need to be registered with the Revenue Online service in order to for them to generate a P2C file for you. However, this time, because they haven't brought along a P45 Part 3, you will need to do a P46 upload instead. And this is done again under the ROS menu in the software, P46 and P45 Part 3, and you have two options. So if you're just registering one employee, you can use the option P46 for single employee, or if you have a number of employees to register all at the same time, it's the P46 batch file. Okay, and again, if you're using the batch file option, again, Revenue recommend a maximum of 10 employees in each batch file that you do. Okay. So for the P46 upload, again, you'll have the employee already set up in Add and Amend Employees, and when you simply choose the employee's name from the listing, all this screen will auto-populate for you, so there's very little to do here. Then click on Prepare File, and it brings you through again to the screen where you save your ROS file. So again, it's the employee's PPS number that is being used for your file name. Okay, simply click Save, and click OK to the message about logging into ROS. So again, just back in the software, if I'm doing a P46 file, go into the P46 for single employee here, choose the employee from the listing, everything's filled in for me here, I prepare file and I save. Okay, and that's my P46 file completed. So once either the P45 Part 3 or the P46 have been prepared in the software, they are ready for upload. So back into ROS here, to the same places as usual, you go into My Services, Upload Forms Completed Offline, and for basically a P45 Part 3 or a P46, it's the same option, so it doesn't matter which file type you've done in Thesaurus. When you are in ROS, you're selecting the new employee heading from the drop-down menu here, and you click on Upload Return. Okay, and again, the same screen again here as for the levers. You're going to click on Add File, browse to where you've saved your P45 Part 3 or P46 file. Once selected, it will appear in this box here, and simply type your password in and upload file. So nice and straightforward for you there. Okay. So Audrey just touched on this briefly in the first part of the webinar, but you can also use Revenue Online to do a P30 ROS file. And you've, as Audrey showed you there, you can prepare this first of all in the Payroll Manager software and then upload it into the Revenue Online service. So just to recap there, if you are wanting to do a ROS P30 file, you go into the ROS menu, into the P30 option this time, and choosing the report that you normally use, so the P30 by week number report or P30 by date. And it's important to choose the option that you, for the report that you always use. Okay. Once you've selected the P30 report, this will bring you through to your summary here. So all your P30 totals will be displayed on screen, and you're simply clicking the ROS button at the bottom here. Once you've clicked on the ROS button, this brings you through to the next screen, and all you're doing here is selecting your return period, so be it monthly if you remit monthly or quarterly if you remit on a quarterly basis, and then you choose the period start date. So say, for example, we're doing the P30 for January 2016, our period start date is the 1st of the 1st, 2016. Once you've selected your period start date, this screen will then automatically populate for you with the figures on your P30 report. And all you need to do then is fill in a contact name and prepare file. Okay. On preparing file, again, you'll be then given the option to save your P30 file to a location of your choice. And the name of the file will be, first of all, it will start with your PYE number, the year and the period in question, as you can see in this example here. Then you click Save and you'll be given the prompt that it is now ready for upload there. Okay. So once you are in ROS, you're simply again going to the My Services menu, and under again the option Upload Forms Completed Offline, you're going to choose the P30 option this time and click Upload Return. Okay, and again, click Add File, browse to where you've saved your P30 file, open it and type in your password and upload file. So on successful upload then, this will bring you through to the following screen. So this will allow you then to tell Ross whether you wish to make a payment there and then, be it by Ross debit instruction or card payment, or if you have another means of payment already set up and you don't want to make your payment in this manner, you can select the option down the bottom to file the return only. So you're simply submitting your P30 figures at this stage. Okay. If you choose to make a payment, then the following screen will then ask you just to confirm your payment here, as per the following example. And on clicking on OK, this is the final stage. So this is where you enter your password again and sign and submit. So that is you submitting your P30 return to them. Okay. And again, you'll have acknowledgement that has been received successfully for you. Just talking about P30s there, it may just also be a good thing to point out that if you, if any of your P30 figures are negative, then Thesaurus will allow you to prepare a Ross P30 file for upload, but it will fail, and that's because Revenue can't accept a negative figure when you're uploading it. In that instance, where you do have a negative figure, the only other option is to do a Ross online return for your P30, and where your negative figure is appearing, you put a 0 in place. Okay, and then in order for you to get the benefit of that negative figure, it would then just need to be a manual adjustment to your payment figure on the next P30 return that you do. Okay, so that completes the Ross returns for you. So yeah, we're just there at 11 o'clock there, so I just think there's a few questions coming in here, so we'll just go back to Audrey now.
Okay, so the first question there is what to do with an employee who was registered at the end of 2015 but had the first day of work in 2016. So should they be issued with a P60 and included with 0 payments on the P35s, etc.? So I mean, it's optional, I suppose, to give a P60 with the the 0 payments. It will show the previous employment figures anyway, so it may be no harm. They won't appear on the P35 as they didn't receive any payments, so anybody with 0 will not go through to a P35. Okay. Right, okay, so if paying monthly, does 53rd week differ things for us to still 12 months of pay? So no, the 53-week year would only be applicable to a weekly payroll. So on monthly, it'll always be very straightforward of just 12 monthly payrolls. If the same employee is employed twice, do they come up on the P35L twice? So yes, they do, and for anybody, there's probably very few people doing a manual return, but for anybody who is, you should amalgamate or add those 2 records together and report them once on the P35, but the program will amalgamate those 2 records for the purpose of the Ross P35. Okay. So we have a payment plan in place with Revenue. We pay a set amount each month. So do I need to do a P30 at the end of the year, or is it just a P35? So my understanding is, I think you just need to ensure that, I can check this up, but you just need to ensure that at least 90% of the liability has been paid at the time of uploading your P35. So in other words, if there's more than, if there's 10% or more outstanding, then I think you could be fined by Revenue. So certainly you should review the the P30 payments, the periodic payments throughout the year, and always ensure, I suppose, that you're, you're covering what's on the program, the liability.
And just following on, do we have to upload a P30 each month through Ross? I pay Ross my credit transfer, so yes. So it's, you still need to report what your P30 liability is. And, it's giving them the breakdown of what your PYE, PRSI, USC is. So yes. Even if you have a credit transfer set up, that still needs to be done.
Okay, so does this a question there, if you realise after doing your P35 that there has been a mistake on the payroll, what should you do? So the correct option there at that stage would be to do an amended P35. So within the payroll you would make your corrections, and under the P35, P60s heading and ROS P35 there is a tick option for an amended return. So we can just show that there on the software. So 1 second there. Okay, so this is if you have successfully uploaded an original ROS P35 and you have then made changes to your payroll. So under the P35, P60s heading and ROS P35, okay, you tick here to indicate that this is an amended return, because revenue will not accept a second original P35 return. It'll tell you that there is no return outstanding, but by ticking this you're telling the software and revenue that it's an amended return, and then they will accept it in place of the original one that you have already submitted. So once you've ticked it, it's the same procedure again, just prepare it and upload it to ROS. Okay. So within the weekly payment on the Thursday, how do I pay the P30 to revenue for December? I think this is possibly in relation to week 53. So I mean, if you do 53 weeks on the payroll, so for last year anybody that paid on a Thursday had 53 pay days, so that would automatically flow through to the P30 to show you the correct liability for revenue. Okay.
We have a couple of questions, so we may just follow up on with you directly, the ones, because we may just need a little bit more information on them. Yeah. So we're not answering a question, we'll get back to you on it. Yeah.
And we will get back to you today.
Yeah.
But I think that's
everything.
It.
Yeah.
So thank you again to everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah. And we'll be sending on the PowerPoint and the recording of the presentation to you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.